Hello, this is Ryan Langewisch. I'm the designer on Tasty Humans, and I'm here to just teach you a quick run through of how to play the game. So in Tasty Humans, you take on the role of a fantasy monster such as the Griffin or the legendary dragon, and your goal is over the course of the game to be the most satisfied monster as you eat adventurers that are coming along to try to save their village king that you have captured and use to attract a steady buffet of adventures for you to enjoy. The way that you are going to determine your satisfaction at the end of the game is by looking at this grid on your board that makes up your stomach, your monster's stomach. So throughout the game, you're going to be dropping different tiles and pieces into here that represent what you're eating. And ultimately, you want to try to organize things in a way that it's going to bring you the most satisfaction. So the first thing that's going to determine how satisfied your monster is your monster's personal craving. So every monster has their own specific thing that they like more and will get them points. So for example, the Griffin scores 3 points whenever it has a group of 4 consecutive horizontal or vertical tiles that alternate types. So for example, if I was able to get a boot armor in my stomach, that pattern would get me 3 points. Same if I was able to get it vertically, though I cannot use the same tile in more than one pattern. So that's something specifically the Griffin is trying to do throughout the game. On the other hand, the legendary dragon wants to make 2x2 squares of the same type. So anytime I'm able to get a group 2x2 of the same type, this is going to score the legendary dragon 5 points towards its satisfaction at the end of the game. So at the beginning of the game, you know what your personal craving is, and you also are going to have one leader tile. So leader tiles all have unique scoring abilities that are going to vary under different factors of what's in your stomach. So these are going to end up falling into your stomach and are going to score based on the things that are around them. So for example, these were randomly dealt at the beginning of the game. And the Griffin here has this leader tile that is saying for every hand tile that's in the same row or column as this leader tile is going to get it 2 points. So when I end up dropping this in, I want to position it in such a way that I can get hand tiles in the same row or column, and then throughout the game continue to get hand tiles in the same row or column. On the other hand, the legendary dragon here started with this guy, which is saying for every helmet that is within 2 spaces of this, which kind of makes this diamond pattern, is going to get it 2 points. So similarly, wherever I get that, I'm going to want to kind of surround it with helmets to try to score the most points. Now, over the course of the game, you are going to acquire more of these leader tiles. So we have up here this leader tile board that has been pre-populated with stacks of face-down leader tiles. Each stack is going to have one more than the number of players. So here I'm just showing you a very condensed 2-player game. So each of these has 3 tiles. And at the beginning of the game, we're going to take this first stack and we're going to flip it over for all to see. And so this is showing the players, these are the upcoming leader tiles that are going to be available at the end of this first round. And so we've got 3 different ones here. We've got one that gives you 3 points if you have every one of the 4 different tile types in a row. So you want to kind of get each tile type in every single row. This one is going to give you 2 points for every armor tile that's next to any leader tile, not just this one. And this guy, kind of similar to the Griffin's hand leader tile, is going to give 2 points for every boot that's diagonal from this leader tile at any distance. So both players now start the game with, they know their personal craving, they know what their first leader tile is going to be, and they see the available tiles that they could get to choose from in the future. So what a round looks like in Tasty Humans is it's going to be centered around what over here is called the Attacking Adventurers grid. So these are the humans coming towards the monster's lair in their efforts to try to save their king, which from the monster's perspective is just an opportunity to pluck them up and eat them. So how a round is going to work is starting with whoever is currently holding the village king, so in this case the Griffin, they're going to get to pick any of the 9 cards that are available in this grid. And there's a few things that they're going to be looking for that would make them want to pick one card over another, or one adventure. So the first thing, so if I use this card as an example, and hopefully the camera will focus on this here, the first thing that you see here is there's this shape that's composed of tiles, and that's different on every single different adventure. This is showing you what tiles this adventure would give you and let you drop into your stomach if you take it. So if I was to take this peasant, I would get to take those 4 tiles. So in this case, it's one of every type of tile. But then I'm going to get to rotate this shape however I want to drop it into my stomach. So if you've ever played Tetris or are familiar with it, you're familiar with the concept of, rotating a shape up top and then dropping it down. And so if I had this shape, there's a few different ways that I could decide I want to drop it. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that if I drop it, let's say I chose to drop it like this, I have to keep it within my columns. I can't, clip it off the end. But if I did this like that, I would then take those tiles from the supply, and I'm going to drop them in. And obviously, you could just see how they're going to drop and put them directly down, but to kind of demonstrate how this would work, this would be coming in like this, right, to match the shape. And this is going to come down, but every tile always collapses all the way to the bottom. So this helmet tile here is going to break and go all the way to the bottom here. And so this is something you just have to keep in mind, because as your stomach starts filling up, you very feasibly could have, a column that's higher than the others. And if you drop pieces on top of that, it's going to break and drop pieces in different areas. And so you can use that to your advantage to try to score more from, your craving and your leader tiles as you fill up your stomach. So I would get to drop it into my stomach like demonstrated. And then I would keep this card. And you're going to keep the cards, the adventures that you take, because at the end of the round, that's going to come into play when we select leader tiles. So I mentioned the first thing here is the shape that we're looking at. The second thing to pay attention to is the crowns. So you'll notice a lot of these cards up here don't have any crowns. There's ones that have a single crown. This one actually has 2 crowns, which is the most. At the end of the round, which is once each player has selected 2 adventures, so it works in a snake draft. So the Griffin's going to select its first adventure, then the Legendary Dragon's going to pick, then the Legendary Dragon picks again, and then it goes back to the Griffin, and that's a full round. And you can imagine in a 4-player game, that's how it would go around the table and then come back around the table. At that point, all the players are going to compare how many of these crown icons they have on their 2 cards. Whoever has the most is going to get to select first from the leader tiles that are available here. On the other hand, if you have the least out of everybody that's playing, you're going to only have 2 left to select from, because there's only 1 more than the number of players that are available each round. So when you're selecting an adventure, you're not just thinking of what piece is going to be best for me to put in my stomach, but you may also be thinking, how are there specific tiles I want, and do I care a lot about if I'm going to be earlier in that draft order? So the other thing, so I mentioned the shape and I mentioned the crowns, which is going to dictate where you are in the draft. But the other thing that may make some adventures look a little more attractive than others is whether you are going to take damage from taking an adventure. So you'll notice there's these red cards. There's swordsmen and there's archers in the deck. And what these adventurers do is they're going to damage monsters when other adventurers around them are selected. So what this means is if I choose to take this swordsman, I don't take any damage. These monsters are pretty large. They can overwhelm a swordsman to the point that they're not getting damaged by it. But if I was to take this captain here, I would actually take 2 damage, 1 from each swordsman that is adjacent to this adventure. So swordsmen are always going to hit in the spaces adjacent. An archer is always going to hit 2 spaces away in a straight line. So just like how this captain would give me 2 damage, this peasant here would give me 2 damage, because I'd take 1 from the swordsman and 1 from the archer. So say, using this as an example again, when I was to take this, Before I dropped this shape in, I would actually be required to take 2 damage, which comes in the form of damage tiles that I have to drop into my stomach one at a time. So I might drop one in here, and maybe I drop one in here. And then I would drop this piece in to the bottom. Now damage, it doesn't inherently hurt my monster's satisfaction, but it is basically taking up spaces that aren't likely going to be scoring for me. And the other consideration is if you ever have damage that is next to another damage, these are now both a -1 at the end of the game. So you have some flexibility to take damage, but if you start taking too much and you're forced to group them together, it could start really negatively affecting your score. So that is something you need to pay attention to, and as this grid changes and new cards come out, different cards may be more dangerous to take than others. So let's now, since I have this all set up here with taking this tile, let's say that's what the Griffin did for their first turn, and they would select this. Now in the attacking adventures grid, they are always going to be walking towards us. So what happens is these cards actually collapse down as they march onward, and then a new card is going to fill from the top of the deck and go here. And now it's going to be the Legendary Dragon's turn to select from the grid, which has now changed a little bit. For example, this archer no longer is hitting any space because there's nothing 2 spaces away in a straight line. And then the Legendary Dragon is going to get to select from the grid. Now, I mentioned that the red cards, the swordsmen and archers, are what dictate damage, but you'll notice there's also a few green cards. Green cards are class types that have some other effect, unlike the peasants that are always going to just be, vanilla. There's no additional effect when you take a peasant other than you may be taking damage. In addition to that, we have a wizard, we have a cleric, and we have a captain. So what these do is a wizard, after you drop the piece into your stomach, you essentially have a bit of a magical belch. And what that's going to do is let you pick any 2 tiles that are adjacent to each other in your stomach, which could include damage, it could include leader tiles, and you get to swap them. And so that can be an interesting one to allow you to maybe change some things around that aren't maximizing your satisfaction at the time. A cleric, when you take it, allows you to heal 1 damage out of your stomach. So, the Griffin, this may be an attractive card for it because it's got this damage here that it may be interested in getting rid of. Now, should the game go onward and, I have damage underneath a bunch of other tiles, if I heal that damage, everything's going to fall down, which may not be what I want to happen if I've been planning. So you got to be careful about what damage you are healing. Finally, the captain, you'll notice there's 2 different types here. This captain's banner has a horizontal arrow, and it's probably hard to see on the view here, but this captain has a vertical arrow on its banner. What that means is when you select a captain, it's the other adventurers that are either in the same row or column, depending on the banner, are going to flee. Their captain has been eaten, they're too much of cowards to continue, and they leave. So in this case, if I took this card, these would both get discarded, and then new adventures would all fill in from the top. So taking those can kind of shake up the current state of the attacking adventures grid. So let's just walk through the rest of this round to give kind of an idea of how this works. So for example, the Legendary Dragon here, he kind of likes getting helmets, and he likes going for a 2x2 square of the same type. I'm not going to overthink this for the sake of brevity, but this swordsman here has got a lot of helmets, and actually I don't get hurt from taking this swordsman because there's not a swordsman next to it and there's no archer 2 away. So I'm going to select this one. No crowns, but maybe I'm not too worried about that. So then I would get to take 3 helmets and a boot here, and I'm trying to think of how I want to position this. And now you'll remember, I want to try to get a 2x2 square. So I'd love to get these helmets kind of next to each other, which is a little bit tricky, but let's do something like this. So I'm going to drop it in this arrangement, and I'll kind of just put it in these columns and drop that to the bottom. And now while I have 2 helmets here that are next to each other, what I'm kind of thinking is I know there's a wizard out there, and this is a great opportunity for the Legendary Dragon because I could potentially put that helmet next to the other helmet. So that's kind of what I'm thinking here with the Legendary Dragon. So now that I've selected this and placed my piece, these are going to collapse down. We fill another one from the adventure deck. And now the Legendary Dragon is going to get to pick a second card in a row because remember, it is a snake draft. And so continuing on that thought I was having, this wizard looks great, actually. It doesn't take any damage. There's no swordsmen or archers that would be hitting it. And so I'm going to take that, and I drop it in first. And I would love to get that helmet right in that spot. Let's see. And so I'm going to drop it like this here. And I'm going to drop it down so that I get those helmets like that. And now the wizard ability is going to trigger, which lets me swap any 2 adjacent tiles. And so I'm going to take this boot and this helmet and swap them, which is beautiful. Now, granted, I didn't get any crowns, which is going to hurt. I'm guaranteed now to lose to the griffin that already has 2, but I'm pretty happy with what I was able to make happen here. So then my turn is done. These are going to collapse down, and the griffin is going to get the final turn in the round, selecting 1 additional adventure, which the griffin over here, seeing as I used this as an example, I wasn't strategizing at all, is not really any closer to working towards their goals. But let's think through here. I've got this hand, and I know that I'm going to be scoring in rows and columns that have hands. So after we finish this round, this leader tile is going to get dropped next. So I know I'm going to have to do that. And so I may want to set myself up so that I can get this in line with some of the hands. So I'm thinking that maybe this guy might be nice. So again, I already know I won with crowns, so I'm not really worried about getting more of them. And this guy, he doesn't take any damage from any of the people that are out right now. So I'm going to take him, and that's 3 hands and a boot. And I think I'm going to drop that just kind of straight down like so. Like this. And so that's going to fall. The boot's going to land on top of the damage. These are going to collapse here. And I feel like now I've made this spot pretty nice for that row and column hand piece because I have hands already below it and I have 1 hand to the right. So I kind of like what I have going there. That is now a complete round in Tasty Humans. This will go down and set it up for the next round. We've got some more damage out there. But now we are going to proceed to the leader draft. So like I said before, you're going to compare crowns to determine who's going to get first pick of these new leaders that are coming out. So in this case, the Griffin has more crowns. They're going to select first. If there would be a tie, which you can imagine in a 4-player game could be fairly common, the first tiebreaker is going to be least damage in your stomach will get to pick first. If there's still a tie, it's whoever currently has the village king proceeding clockwise is the way the tie would break. So in this case, the Griffin is going to get to pick first. They're going to get to pick any of these tiles. And I think the Griffin likes this guy here, which is the one that I will get 3 points for every row that I can get every one of the basic tile types. So boot, armor, helmet, and hand. I already have 3 of the types in this one. And actually, I have 3 of the types here, so I could potentially get both those rows to score. So I like that one. This is now going to go into my leader space here, and the one that was there before is now going to get dropped in, which, as I planned, I want to drop it right here so that it's aligned with these hands. And now this is now going to be there for the rest of the game, I guess, unless I take a wizard and swap it around, which I'm not likely to do. But you can see as the game goes on, the next time we have a leader draft, this is going to get pushed to my stomach, and then the next one. And in a 2-player game, you end up drafting 4 leaders in addition to the one you started with. So you're going to finish the game with 5 leaders in your stomach that all have their own scoring conditions in addition to your creature's personal craving. So it kind of has this escalation as you go throughout the game as far as the ways that you can score in your stomach. So now that that's been picked, the Legendary Dragon is going to have pick of one of these 2 armor next to leader tiles or boots on a diagonal. Neither of them are very great with what I've got going on right now, but maybe we take the boot one. I've got some boots there. That's going to bump off my one that scores for helmets within 2 spaces. And this is actually a little tricky because I could put it here, which would already score all these 3, but then I'm losing a lot of scoring opportunity because it's up against the side of my board. Or I could put it over here. That still scores 3, and I have some more room. I think I like that. This is already scoring these 3, and I have all these spaces over here that I could try to put more helmets. But now I know the next thing I want to be thinking about is boots on the diagonal. So at this point, once the leader draft is completed, the one that's always left over is going to get discarded. And then the next set of leader tiles is going to be revealed. So we've got some nice ones here, and I'm not going to go over what each individual one does. They're all unique, and the rule book, has descriptions of each one. But at this point, the leader, or the village king token, is going to get passed clockwise. So in a 2-player game, this is just going to pass to legendary dragon. Next round, it would just go back to the griffin. And so this is going to cause the next round, the snake draft, to go legendary dragon, the griffin twice, and then legendary dragon again. At this point, these can be discarded. They only were kept so that we could do the crowns for that draft. So we'll discard these off, and now we start a new round. And that's what it's going to look like. We're kind of repeating that process, right, of everybody taking 2 adventures in a snake draft, then dropping everything into your stomach, and then you're going to get to take a new leader tile, which is going to bump your other one into your stomach and add more scoring conditions. We're going to keep going like that until at some point one monster completely fills their stomach up to the line for that player count. So in a 2-player game, we go all the way to the very top. 3-player, 4-player, we'd stop earlier than that. So if the griffin, for example, had every single square in here filled, that would trigger the final round. We would finish the snake draft, so other players still get to finish their turns. If anybody has any leftover leader tiles that they're holding on, they would get to drop it at the end. But then that would trigger the end of the game and go into scoring. One advantage of being the one that triggers that, if you're the one that eats, fills your stomach up first, you actually get to take the Village King token as a nice dessert, which is worth 2 points at the end of the game. Now, it is possible that we have gone through all of the leader drafts before that happens. If that's the case, if we get to the leader draft and there aren't any here because we already exhausted them all, we simply won't be drafting. We'll only be dropping, the last one that we selected. And if we get there again and we don't have anything, we just skip the draft leader step. Once someone's filled their stomach and we have completed the round and everybody has everything, then we're going to move to scoring. So these would normally all be off of here, but you would get to flip this board for a handy dandy score track, and then you would take the score markers for each of the monsters in play. So we have the griffin and the legendary dragon, and we're going to go through scoring, which is personal cravings. So we're going to look at each one. Obviously, griffin didn't do anything yet here. The legendary dragon actually did, so let's give him the 5 points here. Clearly a girl dragon. Look at that. Just look in her eye. Once you've done the personal cravings, then we're going to be going through leader tiles. So in this case, the griffin has 3 hands that are in the same row or column as this one, which is going to get them 6 points. They likely would have been able to get more than that had we gone through the whole game and been able to fill out our boards. The legendary dragon is going to get also 6 points for helmets that are next to here. And obviously we would have 4 more leader tiles most likely in your stomach that you would go through and score. And then the last thing is whoever has the Village King token would get an additional 2 points. If you happen to go over 50, which oftentimes does happen, you simply flip to the 50 plus and continue. And then player who is the most satisfied, as indicated by their points on the board, is then the winner. And that is it. That is how you play Tasty Humans. Once you have the basic flow of it, it moves pretty quickly, and it's pretty easy to understand. The Tetris piece is a familiar concept to a lot of people. But there is a lot to chew on in this game mentally, because you can imagine what starts as 2 different scoring goals that you have. After each round becomes 3 and then 4 as you kind of build out your board. And while some of them fade into the background, I mean, you can imagine this one I have over here, this helmet within 2 spaces. Once I get my board filled to, this 3rd line, I don't have to worry about that one anymore because I've done everything I could do with it and I can just move onward. But there is a lot of overlapping scoring conditions, and a key to playing well in Tasty Humans is finding ways to put things in that can count for multiple scoring conditions and, get your personal craving pattern while also matching up with a leader tile. And that's it. That's how you play Tasty Humans. I hope this was an informative video that and that you were able to see everything clearly. If you have any questions about any rules or how certain things work, I would be happy to answer them if you post in the comments. And if you're watching this anywhere near where I posted it, we are currently in day 2 of the Kickstarter, and we're quickly approaching our funding goal. We're excited about some of the opportunities of additions to the game past that funding goal. So if this looks like something you might enjoy, then totally check it out. And there's tons of information on the Kickstarter page. We have, videos from different reviewers and runs-throughs. Obviously, I designed it. I'm super biased. I'm going to tell you it's a fun game to play, but you should go figure it out for yourself, research it, see if this seems like a fun thing that you would enjoy, or you and your game group. And I hope we see you over at the Kickstarter. Thanks for watching.